Yeah, so welcome to the AI Agent Montreal meetup. Sorry. Today we have the amazing opportunity to have Paul with us. And just a little reminder about our community. It's a community for people curious about AI, and we want to demystify and spread and share best practices and tools around it. So today, if you want to discover why, if you have 100% coverage, it's not the guarantee to have a good code quality. We are at the right place, and today we'll see the talk of Paul. Expert practices are the missing piece for AI-assisted development. Just for the organization, the talk is recorded. I will try to answer all your questions in the chat. I will share the video on our YouTube channel, so feel free to see it again after. So thanks to be with us, Paul, and just let me know if you want to share to answer the question along the presentation or at the end.
Yeah, I'm happy either way, really. I mean, we can play it by ear. I can answer during, and then we can just play it by ear, really. I'm happy either way.
Okay, I mute all mic for attendees. Uh, Not for you. Try to speak again. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, can
So
you hear me?
thanks again, and the place is yours.
Yeah, thank you. So you can all see my screen. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, thanks everybody, and obviously to yourself, Nicholas, for arranging the meeting. So I guess for a little bit of context, I'm Paul. I'm a software engineer, been working from Manchester in the United Kingdom. I've spent probably the last year or so trying to answer a question that I think a lot of you are dealing with now, and that's kind of how do you make AI assisted development sustainable? So not just fast, but actually sustainable in the long term. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself just to give a little bit of context. So I've been working in the industry now for over 20 years, or there or thereabouts. For about 13, 14 of those years, I've been doing what I would describe really as XP style practices. So very heavily into things like test driven development, pairing, continuous integration done properly, trunk based development, that kind of stuff. And while I have spent a lot of time on the front end in recent years, I used to be primarily a back end developer as well. So the techniques that I'm going to talk about here apply across the entire stack, both front and back end. I will say from the outset that it's very kind of my experience is very web focused, but that's just the domain that I'm used to working in. Um, One of the things that I will start with is that I'm used to working in a way prior to AI where I have extremely high levels of trust and confidence in my tests, right? And the mentality that I try to go with and have done for a long time is that if your tests are green, you should be confident enough to go all the way to production. And that's an approach that I've had for a very long time. And doing things like test-driven development and so on has kind of helped me to do that. And I managed to do that on many projects. Again, nothing to do with AI. That's just kind of what I'm used to. And then, yeah, so you know, the way that these kind of things work, it tends to all be based on things like small increments, fast feedback, continuous refactoring, right? So the test-driven development part is a really big part of it for myself. I like feedback that is both kind of technical and the non-technical side. So on the technical side, I assume probably a lot of people on this call may be already familiar with things like test-driven development. We'll talk about it in more detail in a bit. But one of the things that I really like about it is that it gets you into this very fast feedback loop where if you make a mistake, you find out in seconds and you fix in seconds. And I'm really kind of used to that kind of way of working. So really, it's all about having confidence to make changes over time. And the problem that I found is that AI broke that when I first started working with AI. When I first started really trying um, to see what I could actually do with AI. So the way I would kind of describe it is that it was like a kind of interesting parlor trick to me at first. So it was like very impressive in parts, but what I really didn't like is that AI would go off and do things that I hadn't asked it to do. It would just do too much all in one go. I instantly found that I'd lost the confidence that I was so used to. And for somebody who is used to, being able to say, hit a button, does it go, do my test go green? Good, I can go to prod. Suddenly to be in this position where I'm like, oh, do I really trust this? Do I really know if this is good? Do you know what I mean? And that was a real problem for me. And so that's a little bit of kind of context for myself. So I'm coming at it from a very, I guess, a very different angle to some people who, maybe go down the route of having, agents that live for hours on end and you know, do thousands of things at once. I wanted to kind of rein it in and keep the confidence that I've got. So what I found was that over time, I started experimenting with Claude. So Claude is the model that I use. Well, I use Claude Opus for pretty much everything, but I found that Claude was the model that seemed to be working best. So that's where I invested pretty much all of my time with AI. And what I started doing was in my spare time. I don't have too much spare time. I do have two young kids, but in the time that I had, um, I would experiment and try to just do different things and just kind of see what works and what doesn't. Um, and what happened was I started creating certain rules. So I think all of these models have got different ways of encoding standards, one way or another. And for Claude, it's you've got your kind of skills. If I just click on this now, I won't go into massive detail now, but we'll go into some of this. I created these are my dot files, so they are legitimately my dot files. It's not just got Claude skills in here, but I started adding them in, and one of the first things that I started to do was to play about with things like test-driven development, and I found quite quickly that it seemed to actually work quite well. I was getting quite good results. Suddenly, my confidence was going up. So what I found is that the same principles that made human development effective, so things like TDD, bounded scope, clear goals, and this kind of thing, also made AI development effective as well. And so I wasn't just trying to get these kind of quick wins. I was trying to make the gains sustainable. So I found that without any kind of real discipline behind it, AI would create technical debt faster than humans ever would. But having these kind of rules in place, it was the first step towards um, making it sustainable. I will say as well from the very beginning that it's not a magic fix. These things, you'll see as I go through, and I'm going to do a demo in a bit, which I'll talk about in a second. But you'll see that I'm very much involved in the loop, and every now and then, sometimes things don't go quite according to plan. But I've found that certain techniques that I'll discuss here have helped really well. So the stuff that I'm going to talk about today is these kind of four steps to it. So the first is we're going to talk about the key practices in more detail, exactly kind of how I've been applying them, what I found that seems to be working well. Then we'll go into these skills in a bit of detail. I'm then going to talk about a real code base that I've been working on in my spare time, and I'm going to do a live demo, and it is a legit live demo. So I hope everything will go well. And funnily enough, in terms of timing, I don't know if people have seen, but on the Claude status page today, they've had some issues, but I did test it out yesterday as well, and I'm just hoping that this I'm hoping this isn't going to be an issue for us, but hopefully it won't. I had a play over lunch as well today, and it was good, so hopefully we'll be good. I'm also going to talk a little bit about architecture as well, because that's something that I've been playing about with more as well, and I think I've had some interesting results there, some actually quite positive results. So we'll talk a bit about hexagonal architecture and a little bit about domain-driven design. I also want to be clear about this, and I think it's only right to be clear, to be honest about these things. So, from my own perspective, things like test-driven development I've been doing day in, day out for a long time. So I know that stuff inside and out. For things like domain-driven design, it's something relatively new to me. So I've been playing about with it a lot more and just experimenting. But I'd rather be honest about that stuff. But I've still had a lot of success with it so far. So I'm just going to share that, and just people can see. So Yeah, so the very first thing, I think one of the most fundamental things that I found quite early is this idea that tests in a kind of AI driven workflow, tests when you go in a test first style, they act as a kind of constraint to the AI, and this is one of the first kind of really big, I guess, kind of eureka moments that I had. So what I found initially was that I would start doing something. I'd give it a prompt, and it would go off, and it would start. It would start doing what you'd asked, but then it would change all these other things, and it would start refactoring stuff you hadn't asked it to do, and it just have a mind of its own. And I really didn't like that. And so what I found was that by reining it back a bit and telling it, no, your job is to go in this red green refactor cycle. Spoiler alert, it's a bit different to red green refactor now, but I'll talk about that in a bit. But you go in this green refactor cycle, and the your job is to make this test pass, right? And to keep working in these increments. What I found was that it would actually constrain it, and it would suddenly start working in these smaller increments, and suddenly I could see, and because the increments were smaller, and because we're dealing with going test first, I could analyze the code, look at the tests, see if they're good, and I had that the confidence was improving every step of the way. So this might be a bit hard to read, but I'll zoom in a little bit. I've tried to kind of give an example here, but it might be easy to just kind of talk about, although I'll talk about this little code example in a minute. But this is another thing. So one key thing to mention is, and again, outside of AI, when I started learning about test-driven development, one of the very first resources I watched was this video called TDD, Where Did It All Go Wrong, by a guy called Ian Cooper. And it had a massive impact on me, that video, because it was right when I was just learning test-driven development. So I wasn't completely clear about what is a unit, and do you know what I mean? This kind of thing. And for people who haven't seen that video, and maybe people who have, just as a kind of recap, what he says in that video is he says, well, lots of people start and they try to do TDD, and they find that it doesn't live up to this promise that they've been given. They're told that it's going to help them to make changes, and the code is going to be easy to work with and cleaner and all of this. And then they try it, and it doesn't work, and they just give up on it. And you get some people who are very vocal and tell you it's all snake oil and this kind of thing. So he basically says, well, one of the big problems is that people become obsessed with this idea of a unit. What is a unit? And they think that a unit is a block of code. So it's a function, or it's a method, or it's a class, an object. And so they think, well, in order to in order to test this unit in isolation, I need to use mocks to isolate this block of code, right? So then they mock out all the collaborators to that thing, and you end up in this position where your tests are actually tightly coupled to your internal implementation details, and you end up in this horrible place where you do a refactor of the code, and even though the refactor works, you test fail, and this just gets in your way, and it doesn't actually help you. So he says do it a different way. So I've got a little kind of noddy example there here, but the example here that I'm trying to kind of show. So this is a kind of React style test, but the idea would be along the lines of, in this example, it's like a front end user, you render a form, fill in the details, click, and you'd have some other kind of setup here, some mock APIs to simulate, a success response. And then you should, under that condition, you would display a message, right? The point is that the test shouldn't know, it should know as little as possible about what's going on under the hood. It shouldn't know what libraries I'm using and all of that kind of stuff, ideally. And here you can see an example of, like, I'm sure we've all seen tons of code bases with tests like this, where you just have, this thing calls that thing internally. Now, to be clear, I think there can be a place for this kind of thing, but to me, this is the exception to the rule. And generally speaking, you should be testing behaviors and not internals. So again, this is one of the big things for me, that I made sure that I got this stuff into my rules. So you can see here, if you see how I've got this TDD skill, this is part of my doc files, and I won't go through the whole thing, but if you see, yeah, you can see there, behavior, not implementation. Further on, I go into more detail and have examples of all of these kind of
Just
things.
in addition, is what you're talking about is a solitary test as a sociable test in
Mhm.
order to avoid a brittle test. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I've from the very beginning, I came at it from this angle, and I found very early on that I was getting the promise of TDD. Um, I was able to refactor with really high confidence, and this was a back end as well. It's mostly like PHP at the time. What was also interesting was almost everybody I spoke to told me I was doing it wrong at the time. They kept saying that's not a unit, and yet they had loads of bugs and we didn't. And it was people seem to have changed their opinion on that over the years. At least people I've spoken to, but at the
Yeah,
time,
but
I used to get
it's important to mention because it's why most of people don't like tests, because when it changed the behavior or the implementation, this broke many tests.
Yeah, this is it exactly. And to be clear, I want to get all this kind of foundation in, and we are going to have like quite a hands-on thing quite shortly. But I think it's important to kind of explain all this context. But yeah, exactly that. The real key thing again is that the tests need to give you confidence to make changes over time, and as long as you have that confidence, that's a really powerful thing. But then that leads you into the next step, which is as people, I'm sure most of the people on this call are probably fully aware of. But you can have 100% code coverage and still have tests that miss real bugs. Coverage just tells you that every line of code was executed during the test run, but it doesn't tell you that the test would notice if something was necessarily wrong. So you could have a test that just calls a function and asserts nothing, but that will give you coverage. It Coverage alone doesn't give you safety. So what mutation testing does is it asks a fundamentally different question. So the question is like, if I introduce a small bug, say for example, if I change, as you can see here, if I change a multiply to a divide, would a test fail for that, right? So flip a boundary condition, negate a boolean. Do the test actually fail? And if they don't, then you found a hole, and the terminology in the mutation testing world is that's a surviving mutant, and you want to. I just find it kind of funny that you say "kill all mutants." It feels like something from the X-Men or something, but it's that's the thing that you want to kill all the mutants, right? So the what I did was people may or may not be familiar with the Striker. Let me find it. Striker can't spell, but Striker testing framework. So this is a really good testing framework that does mutation testing, and it supports a lot of different languages. And you get C# and JavaScript. I think there's other languages, yeah, Scala as well. It's really powerful, but there is a problem with it. And so what this does, sorry, to be clear about what mutation testing will actually do. Mutation testing or a framework like Striker will actually go into your code. So it will actually go into your code, and in real time, it has a list of mutators. So it will actually go in and it will say, okay, you've got this price multiplied by quantity. I am going to change that to divide in real time, and then I'm going to run your tests, see what survives and what doesn't, and anything that survives is a surviving mutant, and then I report that back. So I see Simon's comment, "Kill all mutants" is the edgy rebrand that Red Green Refactor was begging for. I think it is. But so that's all well and good, but the downside to Striker, as good as it is it's really slow because it can take hours to run on CI. So what I did, one of the things that I tried, and this seems to work really well for me, and you'll see this hopefully in the demo shortly. I've created a mutation testing skill in Claude, and I was actually a little bit cheeky on this one because what I did, if you see here, I've got these mutation operators. If you look hard enough on the Striker website and their docs, they've got a page that has all of these mutators on it. So I just pointed Claude to that and I said, grab all these mutators and make that how you work. So what it actually does, though, it will actually modify your code at runtime, runs the tests, and produces a report and tells you what survived, what didn't, and it also has some logic in here somewhere. I'd have to read through it, so you can read through it yourselves if you want. But it does have logic in there somewhere that basically tells it to use a bit of judgment, and where it's not clear on whether the mutation matters, because you can get some that aren't actually as important as you might think. It reports them back to the human, and then asks for your perspective on it and what should I fix. So that turns out to be really really powerful. Sorry. So
Ellipsis.
this, yeah, this is my kind of new core loop, right? And so essentially, what I do now is I always start. Well, there's always a plan step I should mention. So I've got this planning skill here, um, and the planning skill, well, it does pretty much what you'd expect, but what it also does is it creates a temporary markdown file that lives in the code base that registers what the plan is and what it's about to, and it leaves it with enough context so it could pick up again if it lost context, so it could continue. And then what it has is instructions to break the work down into smaller steps, and then what we do is we enter this loop. So we go into red green, not refactor loop. We get loop. We go into red green, mutate. It runs a mutation testing, fix surviving mutants, and then refactor. And I should also say that I don't know if he's on the call. I forgot the guy's name now. Sorry. It was somebody on LinkedIn today. I actually put on LinkedIn before I put my new cycle is red green, refactor mutate, and he pointed out. He said no, it should be red green mutate refactor, and I was like, yeah, it should. Of course, it should. So hot off the press, I changed that just about like an hour ago. But he's absolutely right. It should be red green mutate, fix mutants, then refactor. Of course, it should. And that's now how it works. And what I ask it to do as well is to ask for my kind of approval at each stage. So it kind of works in these smaller increments. You'll see this working soon. So yeah, just to quickly say, I mean, still requires real skill, right? So AI, it's not absolutely perfect, and you'll see here, like probably it'll be fine, but I'd rather be kind of honest with these things. And what I found is that sometimes it will just randomly forget something, and I just have to tell it. So, but usually when you've got the rules in place, it's just a matter of nudging it again and saying, why did you not go test first there? Do it again. Do you know what I mean? And that kind of thing. So I keep verifying. Yeah, go on, sorry.
Just to be sure to understand, because you have tackled the common issue of mutation testing that is time consuming.
Mhm.
In the mutate phases, we can execute this mutation because we have a little scope. It's only
Exactly.
for that. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
And
exactly. So you'll see it does take a bit of time. You'll see that as it's doing it. But exactly what you said, because the scope is small, it's able to do it, and it's not doesn't have to change thousands of files. So it
okay.
just does them. You'll see as we do it. Um,
And
yeah, and
we
this
can
I think.
another point is we can configure your skills you not only with Striker but also in Java, for example, with PyTest or not.
Yeah, and to be clear, it's not actually using Striker. So
Okay.
it does it just directly. Maybe I didn't make that clear, but it basically becomes the mutation testing framework. It just looks at the code, changes it in line, and you'll see as I do it. I'll just show
Okay.
you. Um,
No spoil.
so yeah, all good. So what I'm going to do, I'm a bit unsure about when to start the demo because it will take a bit of time to obviously to run because when I've timed it, it's been about half an hour. So what I'm kind of thinking I can do is maybe start the demo shortly and then continue kind of talking about stuff and keep flipping back and forth if that works, just for time and so on. But what I want to do just quickly before I do start the demo is I just want to briefly mention a little bit about the project that I am working on in my spare time and explain a little bit about this. And I'll also talk about the hexagonal architecture and domain-driven design side of things, because I think these are also really exciting as well and very interesting. But you'll see. So again, for people who maybe not as familiar, the hexagonal architecture I'm a bit more familiar with. So that's all about. I've got a diagram actually. I'll show you in a second. But it's about having a kind of mechanism to create interfaces that give you that allow you to protect the kind of inner core of your domain logic from the external world essentially. So the inner core shouldn't know, for example, that it's even running in a web app, or anything about any frameworks, and that's the same for kind of input. So that will be, if a request comes through from say an endpoint somewhere, HTTP request, the actual inner core of your code shouldn't even know that it came from a request. And then the external, when you go kind of outside, um, if you're talking to a Postgres database, again, your domain shouldn't know that you're dealing with Postgres. It shouldn't know about that. And it's a technique for kind of helping you to enforce that. I'll go into more detail because it's quite interesting. And then domain-driven design, again, this is something that I've been kind of recently learning. I don't want even doing this because of the talk, but I've literally got the book on my desk. I've been reading this in the background kind of thing and playing about with this quite a lot. I'll go into more detail about what I found there. For people who are a lot more familiar with DDD, you may have more advanced understandings than I do, but I think you might find this interesting. So I'll go through that. So I'm going to start the demo shortly, but I just want to talk briefly about how this is kind of set up. So hexagonal architecture, it's often kind of well, it's also called ports and adapters. It's the same concept, and I know it's yeah. The idea behind it essentially is that you've got these kind of layers. So you have the ports are literally just interfaces in your code. So I'll actually show you this in code shortly. We'll have a look. And the idea is that you have adapters that implement the interfaces, and so and then your domain, your inner domain, only knows about those interfaces. It doesn't know about the specifics of which adapter happened to use it. So an example would be that say if you're using you might have an adapter for payments, right? And you might have a Stripe adapter for that. And you should be able to switch to a different payment provider without touching any of your inner logic like this. So what's interesting is you have this kind of dependency rule. So dependencies always point inwards. And you have this kind of testability in that your inner domain can be tested with no infrastructure at all. Sorry, is there an issue with sound? I can see a chat. Sorry, talking about sound. Is there a problem with the sound? Can you all hear me? Just fine. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But
sorry,
one attendee say the room is very low. But for me, it's okay. I think. Okay. We can continue.
Okay. So, and then yeah, the idea is you can have a swappability of your adapters, right? So the app that I've been kind of working on in my spare time is this application that I'm calling Shipping. And I won't go massively into the detail of it, I suppose. I mean, it's a collaborative gift planning application. One thing to mention is that I'm not just building that. I'm building what I'm calling like a micro-SaaS framework. So the idea is that it's a framework that basically focuses on capabilities, right? So I'll just show you some code for this. It'd be easier. So if I just go in here, should have had this open ready, sorry. If I go to here, so if I go, so this is a mono repo setup, and if I go into packages here and I go into core, these ports here are all, the terminology I'm using here is capabilities, right? So payments is a capability, newsletters are, auth is a capability, emails, so on, right? So the idea is that what I want to be able to do is to get to a position where when I've kind of set this all up, I should be in a position to say, okay, I want to spin up a new product, and that product needs auth, and it needs newsletters, and it needs payments, and I'm going to use Stripe for payments, I'm going to use kit.com for newsletters, this kind of thing, and I can just pull them in. And so if you see here, if I just go up a level, these are actual things that implement those things. So you can see here I've got Postmark, that's the service I'm using for emails. I've got Kit for newsletters. I could also use Loops and Payments Stripe. So these are all real working adapters. Now, what I'm going to show you in this demo is, so what I've got here is, so this newsletter here, this functionality works right now. And at this point in time, it points to kit.com. So if I just type in any old email address here, so I can just do testing.com. And just to show you, you can see here, I don't have that email here. If I just click here quickly, give it a second, and it should just appear. Hit refresh. It should. Give it a second. Did it not appear? That's just sod's law if that's not appearing. Hang on. Literally tried this. Oh my God. What's going on there? That should be appearing, but don't tell me that Kit has actually gone down. Okay. Typical kind of demo stuff. Let me just try one more email address. I literally tried this just before the call and it was fine. So let me just, I don't know if there's some issue there, but it could be that I've been playing about with my environment variables and so on. Sorry, that's a bit annoying, but you're gonna have to take my word for it. That's just absolute sod's law. But this is what happens when you do a real demo, I suppose. This does work, and it was absolutely working just like an hour ago. So I don't know. Maybe I just changed an environment variable or something. A little bit annoying, but anyway, the point is, and I'll maybe try and bring it back at the end if I can do. But the point here is that this is how it kind of currently works. So newsletter kit is my newsletter. It's been implemented by this newsletter port. And what we're going to do here, got cheesy little animation, we're going to move it to MailChimp here. So what I'm going to do is I have a prompt all ready to go. So let me just find that on my other screen and I'll paste it in. Just 1 second. So the prompt, I'll let you all read it as well, obviously. I just need to get it. So I'm going to go into terminal here. Let me just go here. Let me make this easier for you to read. So I'll just do this and I'm going to Claude. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paste. They recently changed this, didn't they? So like this was only a day or two ago, and the effort goes to high by default. I'm going to put it to max because that's what I would normally do. I'm going to paste this in, and you can read it while it's thinking. Okay, so what it's saying here, I'll just leave this on the screen, but use the plan skill to plan your approach before writing any code. Stick to the plan throughout, especially run mutation testing. I don't know if I want to read every single line, but essentially what I've done before this is I got it to do a kind of a bit of a planning session where it looked at the MailChimp API and it looked at my ports, my interfaces, and it kind of worked out how things need to fit together. So I just had that kind of prepared and ready to go. So while that's kind of going in the background, I'll leave it kind of running for now, and we'll keep coming back to it. But as I say, this is the kind of structure that I've got now for chipping, and we have this kind of inner domain, which I'm just trying to think the best way to do this. I'll keep flipping between the demo and the actual talk. Maybe getting ahead of myself by and do you know what? I think for now, if we just watch if we're okay with this, and what I can probably do is just take any questions now
Yeah,
while
we
this is
have
running.
some
Does that
question.
work?
I can unmute Garrick, I think. Garrick, you can ask directly a question.
I had a question earlier, basically. Let me see how I phrased it. Effectively, my ask was I found when I was trying to make a brute force run, and this was months ago, with other less mature frontier models of trying to do canon TDD, small steps, baby steps, XP, red green refactor. I felt like I was just getting fought every single way. My question to you is, and this is the trick to me, what's the right size on this? Because at the same level, I don't necessarily want to give it an end-to-end user journey and just let it go off and potentially architect garbage that I'm going to have to clean up anyways. What's the sweet
Yeah,
spot?
yeah. So for me, it's a really interesting question actually. So, and one thing that I hadn't mentioned until this point. So one of the first things that it's going to do here, so you'll see this in a moment, it should create it's invoking the plan skill now, and what it should do is in a moment I should have a plan file that it will create, and the plan file should have some acceptance criteria in it. So that's the first thing. It has a kind of clean list of acceptance criteria. Then it's told to try to break the work down into smaller chunks, so it will do that. But the other thing is that and this is really worth saying because obviously people who understand TDD will know that TDD done properly is always one test at a time, right? So it's always one test, red green refactor, right? And as a human being, you get into this kind of rhythm where your tests give you this really rapid feedback and so on. Now, interestingly, when I started trying to get it to work with TDD flow, I forced it to go that way, like always one test at a time. But I thought, I'm also going to experiment because why not? Like let's just see kind of how this works. And I experimented by allowing it to do more than one test at a time, and surprisingly, it actually works really well. Now, what I would say is that the advantage of TDD is kind of different to how a human would get an advantage, right? So for me, I get in this really fast feedback loop, and it helps me when I'm designing the API as well to a point. because you become a consumer of your own API very early, and you get to kind of see, what works, what doesn't. But with AI, what I found is it's more about constraining it more than anything. It's about giving it this clear rule that your job is to just get these tests to pass, right? And when you go into a green state, well, obviously now I do a refactor. Oh, hang on, I'm going to right. So you can see here because I did this before. Sorry, like I was testing this out, so I'm going to tell it completely ignore the existing. I was testing it out. The existing branch and overwrite. Yeah, okay. So let that continue. But yeah, so what I tend to do though is I always want clear acceptance criteria. One of the things that TDD always gave to me was I always think that BDD and TDD are more or less the same thing, which maybe is a controversial thing. I don't know, but
Done
yeah,
right, I agree with you
yeah,
100% because it's
yeah,
behavior,
yeah,
units of behavior, right? Okay.
exactly. And the thing that I always got from BDD, and like I've always done this, is I always will sit down with the business and make sure that we've got a clear acceptance criteria before I start on the work. And things can increment along the way, and you don't have to rigidly stick to it. I'll maybe go back and ask questions as I'm doing it. But the three amigos kind of style is something that to this day I still do. And I'm really clear that AI needs to have clear requirements as well. So we're at a point now. Sorry, where it just says the plan is here. So let's have a quick look at what it's saying in the plan. So where is it? MailChimp adapters. So if I go to, sorry, I've got so many things open. Just 1 second. I've lost my terminal.
Yeah.
IDE.
I have another question after from Emmanuel.
Yeah, it was kind of like a debate also between what Garrick was saying also. Well, just to clarify, Paul, you're not the only one that thinks that BDD is TDD. Actually, Dan North, the creator of BDD, says exactly the same. That's why he created it. But then after that, they make like the whole framework thing. But referring to the skills and asking to Garrick, like, or replying to him, what I do is I use zombies. I basically give him the idea to, okay, split this into the zombie pattern, which is basically identify 1, 0, 1, many, and so on. And then with that, what I do is I go in each of the cycles and I go small step by step on them and force them just into, okay, describe me exactly this use case only and how would you slice it, and then just do this one. And the plan is, instead of doing like a whole plan of the whole functionality, is just do this plan. Don't do the whole thing. Make me a plan of this and then go for it.
Okay.
If it helps you to like the baby steps.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll just quickly show you this because I want to keep it rolling in the background. In fact, what I'll do is we'll read through it, but I'll tell it to continue just for time. So I'll just say continue. But you can actually see already though. See that each step follows red, green, mutate, kill mutants, refactor, with a stop for your approval. But what I'll probably do, just for the purposes of the demo, we'll maybe stop for 1 or 2 steps, and then I'll just tell it to kind of go through more quickly if that works. Because otherwise, I don't mind doing it either way, but it's just for the demo, I suppose. But you can see here that one of the things that I think is really important as well is that the reason I started creating these plan documents was also because you would get these compaction events, and every now and then the compaction would just, sometimes it's okay, but sometimes I found it was like it had amnesia and the session was going really well, and then it would do the compaction event and just forget everything, and I've like lost this session. So this is a way of kind of persisting what I'm doing and leaving the context so it can just pick up again if it needed to as well. But you can see here it's broken these down into all these different steps. So sometimes these might be really granular, and if they're a bit too granular, I might allow it to, I might say combine a few steps as well, depending. But generally speaking, I go with this. So what it's doing now, I should mention. So I'll just show you in the background. So what it'll be doing is it will be creating a new folder, which will be newsletter Mailchimp, and it will be implementing the provider in a way that so the adapter in a way that then becomes reusable throughout. So again, with this being a monorepo, I have basically one app. This one doesn't really have much in it. But the idea is that over time, I should be able to just, spin up new apps. And I'm kind of using this as a way to, this first app is a way to prove this framework, if that makes sense. one other thing to just quickly mention, I've now got this 1 million context, so I don't seem to get these compaction events quite as much now. But yeah, we'll see. Are there any more questions while this is continuing?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Garrick, you have another question about the size?
No.
Yeah.
I was kicking out a hypothesis in chat, taking if anyone who knows me or has had the misfortune of hearing me speak before, I'm a big fan for torturing a metaphor. So I put out the hypothesis that, with AI agents, you could still be doing XP, taking baby steps, but you're piloting a Gundam suit now. So a baby step for a Gundam is a heck of a lot bigger than a baby step for a human.
Yeah.
So, Richard, over to you about the DDD question. I unmute your mic so you can ask it directly.
Yeah, so like how close to the DDD sort of concepts have you organized things?
Okay, so what I've got, I can kind of show you in here. And one of the things that I was gonna, I'm planning to show you actually at the end is the DDD kind of stuff. So, but I'll just kind of show you in here. So what I have, so inside the app itself, inside the chipping app, I have this domain folder, and everything in here basically is based on domain-driven design concepts. And actually, what I can do, let me show you in the presentation. I'll just quickly skip to one page. So one thing that I did was I asked it, and you can see here, I actually asked AI, and I'm going to do this at the end. We'll do this right at the very end if you want, where I'll do it again, and you can see me do it with a prompt and see it happen. But I basically told it, without reading any documentation, with no docs. I told it to ignore the Claude MD, but apparently it can't do that. But I said, no other context. Read the models just inside the directory and tell me what the application does. And it was able to actually basically reconstruct the story of the application and pretty much exactly what it does. And this little page here is you can see it's the click event doesn't seem to be working now, but basically when I hover over here, you can see how these objects relate to each other. So if I hover over like a say savings goal here, you can see how like that relates to a money value object and so on. And this is all just created by just telling AI, just look at this folder and see what you can do with it. I also had it create an entity relationship diagram, which is quite cool. But yeah, it's using things like, entities, value objects, and aggregates under the hood. But again, as I say, I don't consider myself a complete expert on it. And I know that DDD is about more than just the kind of tactical side, right? It's all about the whole business domain and so on. This is really an experiment for me to see how far I could not only kind of push this, but also an experiment in trying to reduce context somewhat. Because my thinking here was, if you have this kind of inner core, that if I go back a minute, if I have this inner core here that is independent of everything else, and it expresses the business domain really well, then hopefully that's going to reduce the amount of context that is needed as well. And that does seem to work. Okay, so it's still going here. Actually, normally I'd expect it to have.
Can you talk closely to your mic, Paul? Yeah.
Oh, is it quiet? Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll try and stay close to it. Yeah. So. So you can see here, it's doing mutation testing here now. So actually, has it found a surviving mutant there? It should produce a report at some point. But you can see, like, if I just scroll up a little bit, so it's going in this kind of test, this TDD kind of style. So, red, green, but then it's getting to this point where it then runs mutation tests, and you can see that some of these apparently have survived. I can ask it at the end. There you go. So it's found, what did it find?
One survivor.
So here we go. Yeah. So error fallback branch, success return. So basically now I can actually ask it, let's just ask it, what test did you add to fix the surviving mutant? Just to see what it actually added there. But you'll find that it tends to be quite good Oh, it didn't. Intentionally deferred. Okay, so it should fix, but you're right to call that out. Surviving mutant is in the code that exists now, so it should be killed now. So it was planning to do it anyway, but it's as you can see here, it's what it usually does is it does it in line, and you see it actually do it. But again, it's not always 100% deterministic in the way it does it. But yeah, it's going to write that test now. It should see the failure, and then it's going to see the pass, and then generally what I would do is, I go in here and I go and look at the actual code that it's written. So I always start with tests. Don't know why we're getting like a TypeScript kind of issue here, but I would go through at this point, and actually just double check these tests. And actually there's a little smell there that I don't like, but I'm not going to correct it right now. But generally I would go through this stuff and double check that I'm happy with the way it's written, the tests, and yeah, and then go that way. But I think what I'll do now, if it works for you, I'll tell it to just kind of go to speed through so that I don't stop it at each point, unless people specifically want me to leave it this way. It's just to kind of save a bit of time, I guess, on the call. I'll just say, I have a weird way of talking to it. Like I talk to it like it's a human. I don't know if other people do this, but I literally say, I am demoing. I tend to just always do this on a call right now. So I'll just say, so skip the verification step where you wait for me to check on this occasion, and just continue until you get to the end. I guess another thing that I could do, just to show you while this is going on, I'll do this in real time if you like. What I could do is there is another query that I was going to do this right at the end, but again, just because we're kind of waiting for that, let me get this query and I'll paste this in so you can see it. Where is it? Hang on. Here we go. So this one is for the let's go in. Yeah. So I'll just have another agent. It's not going to modify code here. I'm just going to paste that. Let me paste in into the chat what I've just pasted. So I'm basically telling it, read only the files in the in apps chip-in source domain. So that is inside here. So just in here, no Claude MD, no README, nothing. What does this application do? What are the key entities? And all of that. And just to see what it can recreate from there. So I'll just give that a minute as well. And we can see how that goes. How much code? Sorry, I just see the question there. How much code do you have to review? Usually a day. So the thing for me is, like, when I first started, I was really, reading every line of code. And I would say now I've gotten to a point where I still check, but the checks tend to be very quick. And I tend to be looking for certain things. I'll be checking that the tests are good. And usually they are now, because it's also a fairly well-established code base. And I think that helps. And it can look at the existing test structures and kind of understand how that all works. So that seems to work quite well. I don't think I spend a huge amount of time. It's usually, because I try and do it in small chunks, it's usually pretty quick, to be honest. So I sometimes spot the odd thing, like I spotted a bit of a mutation going on in a test there that I wouldn't normally allow through, that kind of thing. But generally speaking, it's pretty fast, to be honest. Let's see, how defensive have you been when running agents inside a Docker containers, clones with big pulls?
Just Emmanuel, before we have Christopher that have a question.
Sorry.
If you can talk directly, Christopher.
Yeah, hi. I guess my question was mostly just around like what elements of the process you find most important. Like for me, I'm not in an environment like the TypeScript like web environment where I can just pull in packages and pull in like these set frameworks and everything. I'm having to build a lot of these tools myself to be able to use them.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of like, where would you focus? Like what do you feel like you've got like the most amount of like where to almost like focus your time, and what is like a nice to have later on when you've got there?
Yeah, to me, the most important thing would always be the confidence in the tests, I would say. That's always my kind of like my number one priority, because I want to live in that world where you just hit a button and everything just works. And you don't you're not having to second guess things. So even outside of because obviously I'm using in this instance, I'm using Next.js. I'm not actually the world's biggest fan of Next.js, but it's so popular and stuff that it's just kind of AI knows it really well and so on. But I would just say, like, obviously I don't know kind of your experience and what you've kind of worked on, but if you've got a kind of strong sense of what good looks like outside of AI, I would take that same kind of that same experience and the same kind of sense of that feeling of what good looks like. And to me, it's always very heavily based on test confidence. I mean, it's not the only thing, but it's obviously really important. It's just having that kind of confidence in the ability to keep making changes over time. Can I just quickly show this, if you don't mind? So this is what it's saying. So what does this application do? So this is all coming from just reading, the domain folder. So it helps people organize gift giving for occasions, birthdays, Christmas, weddings. Users create events for recipients, build wish lists of gift ideas. I'm giving all my secrets away here, by the way. I didn't really think of that, but it's all good anyway. But you can see here it's got these entities. It understands the relationships between them. It's got these business rules, claiming gifts, token. So all of this stuff is just based on reading that internal folder. And to me, this is a really powerful thing. And I would say a couple of things on this one. Oh, sorry, there's a really key point here that I wanted to make that I haven't even mentioned, which is if I go here, one thing that I've got it doing is, oh, sorry, not that one. I have been using it to kind of learn, so I've been getting it to create lessons along the way. But this thing, a glossary. So what I've done is I told it to create a glossary of what all the terms mean in the domain, and to keep a semantic meaning as well, so that it understands. And so this is the ubiquitous language, right? And the idea is that and this is another thing. So I have a DDD skill in my doc files. The DDD skill I've got in there, it tells it it's optional because not everybody will be doing it. But one of the things it tells it to do in here is to double check to make sure that the glossary is being used correctly. It also notes that even the original book was based on kind of an XP kind of style of working, and that you expect to learn more about the domain and evolve it over time. But I will say that having that glossary has really helped. That's a really big thing because it uses the code ends up with the exact same terminology everywhere and very consistently, and that seems to be quite powerful as well. Yeah.
And you build the ubiquitous language with the business, right?
Yeah, I mean, in this instance, it's my own product, right? But in reality, of course, yeah, it should be done with real in collaboration with real domain experts and so on. And again, like I say, I don't want to act like I've got a ton of experience in it because I don't. I'm kind of learning as I go. But to me, the real advantages are, I would say, the hexagonal approach leaves me in this position where, first of all, there's clear rules around how the architecture works, and AI seems to like that because it's got clear rules like this is good, this is bad, this is a violation, this isn't.
Do you have some tools or plugin to enforce the rules, to constrain the directory or the structure from hexagonal architecture? For example, in Java, you have ArcUnit or something like that.
So it's interesting. I'm not doing that myself at the moment, but maybe potentially I could do that with like linting rules. Hadn't really thought about that. The way that I'm doing it now is I just use I've got like a hexagonal skill here, and this it's got a bunch of resources in there that tells it how it works and so on. And I also have a PR review agent that goes through and checks there are no violations, and it does things like it makes sure that there are no that the domain has no imports and things like that. If that makes sense.
Okay, the review is the mechanism to see the violation. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm sure it could be improved in that way. I hadn't really thought about like a linting rule, but that's a really good idea. Yeah.
You have a question, Emmanuel? Yeah, right.
Yeah, no problem. I just wanted to know if you actually have ever tried to do TCR, which is test comment revert, with AI, because it looks like the right place to use it for some reason.
Yeah, that's one that I haven't actually done before, and maybe I should. Like, I haven't even done that like outside of AI, and maybe I should try that. I don't know. It's I don't I don't know what other people on this call have if you've experienced the TCR, because I understand what it is, and it's I forget what the
It's
acronym stands for, but
test, commit, or revert, which basically means
that's
if the test is not if the test is passing, then you commit. If the test is not passing, then it's revert. And also sometimes you have pressure rules, which is basically applying a time frame. Like if you haven't commit in like 3 minutes, revert.
yeah. Yeah, no, that's not something I've actually tried. I have some people on LinkedIn have told me that they have tried that and it seems to work well for them with AI. Um, but even for me as a hardcore TDD person, I've never gone quite that far, but maybe I should. I mean, I'd be interested to know if, while this is working, like if you've done that in, outside of AI as well, and if you've had success with it, like what your experience with that is.
Well, I was actually asking because I asked you for the test, and one of the things that I kind of like had the issue with sometimes is that the test sometimes takes longer, and it depends on how your TD cycle goes. If the skills are not taking care of that, if you don't have a skill that is actually ensuring that the speed of the test is actually not being increased, or at least a rule inside them, they can get like really heavy. So I was thinking of using TCR to say, okay, if at some point this is somehow taking longer than X and the test step, let's just roll back because something is not right. Before it was faster, now it's not. What is it exactly? So it was like a trigger point.
Yes, but with mutation testing, I think we need to not revert directly.
That's true. Yeah.
Just Garrick, you have an interesting question about the running of agents. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I had a question regarding because this is Mr. Paranoid's voice in the back of my head. Especially with all the cool things I see people doing with OpenClaw. Ha ha ha. Um, do you strictly run in a Docker container for your own Claude instances? And have you started putting like any hard guardrails on it? I've heard people talk about some horror stories about Claude flipping branches and stuff like that. And so I'm curious, A, confirmation of rumor, and B, if that's something you actively do.
Um, for me personally, actually no, but it's probably something I should be doing. Really, I mean, maybe that's a bit. It's a bit naughty of me when you say it like that. I almost want to say, yeah, of course I do. That's how I do everything. But no,
Okay.
actually, and I
I
probably
just wanted
should.
to see if I was the only one who didn't have that sinking feeling. So good to know.
No, I will say that the open cloud stuff I've never even touched because it just sounds so scary to me. Maybe
Oh, that just
it's
sounds
like.
like a recipe for identity theft and everything else.
Yeah, yeah. And it's just when I first heard it, I thought it surely like I'll read that again. Is that can't be how it works? But no, that's how it works. Yeah. Um. Just so you see here, we're quite close to the final stage now. So I think it's built the package, it's done all the tests and so on. And what it's now going to do is integrate it into the app itself. So I think it's at that point. Hopefully this will work. It's just sod's law that I don't know if it's a British saying sod law, but it's just typical that I don't know why the it didn't seem to work when I first did it. I was playing about with environment variables just before the call, so it should have the uh, it should have the environment variables ready for Mailchimp, and hopefully it'll work. But yeah, I've done it twice already in the last 24 hours, and it did work both times. So let's see if it works when it matters. But it's nearly at the point now, and I think just one other thing I would say that I think is quite interesting. So in the past, when like I've been aware of things like hexagonal architecture for a long time and domain-driven design, but in many of the places where I've worked, and I don't know how other people relate to this kind of thing, but a lot of people would push back if you try to do these things, and they say, "Oh, that's over engineering," right? And it's a typical, and sometimes to be clear, it can be as well. I'm not. I think context is king, right? And if you're doing a small thing, then obviously those things can be over engineering. But I think one of the things that I do find quite exciting about AI and using these kind of approaches is that you can get the benefits of what those techniques give you without the kind of human kind of cognitive kind of cost, if you like. Now it's maybe a debatable one that as well, because I would also say that when you actually, because when you actually read the code that it creates, I actually think it's really quite clean code, to be honest. And I actually think it's very neat, because what you end up with in reality is, and again, I'm sure a lot of you people on this call have more experience with me with these things, but I've lost my slides now. Sorry. But let me just see if I can bring that back. But what you end up with in the end is like this inner core is protected from everything else. You can test it in pure isolation, and it's actually, I find it really easy to read that code. It's really quite straightforward, and all hexagonal architecture really is coding to interfaces and not implementations, right? And it's just about having that kind of level of control. And just to think of an example in the place where, well, a place where I've worked, let's say, it was quite a good place, but there was I remember there's one piece of work where they wanted to change a content management system from one system to another, and it was a really it turns out to be a really big piece of work, because the blast radius is all over the place, because the content management system in question, there was no separation, right? So the types in that system are bled through everywhere into their domain, and so you get this kind of flexibility, this ability to kind of change adapters at a future point in time without necessarily the upfront cost. Yeah.
And it's a way to reduce the scope of change for the AI. And do you use also clean architecture? Because you talk about hexagonal architecture, but we have
no.
Okay.
So for me, that's it, again, it's something I'm familiar with. I should be clear that I've spent probably the last 5 or 6 years mostly doing more kind of front end stuff, while I do have a background in the back end. So recently, because I've been kind of doing my own kind of stuff in my spare time, I've been reading up a lot more on these things. But I don't consider myself like any kind of natural expert on that side of things, if that makes sense. I'm just kind of experimenting now, and again, I thought I'd report back what I've seen, and so far, this is what I'm finding. Yeah.
And do you think just about DDD in an organizational way, it's a way to organize teams around bounded context, for example? Or?
Yeah, I mean, again, so this is, I feel like I have to be really honest to say that, because I'm reading up on this, and that is my understanding right now of the way that I would kind of see it. But I would also expect that there's probably people on this call who have a lot more experience than I do with that, and could probably, that is my understanding though, and that in a real organization, I think it becomes more important than ever to have that kind of ubiquitous language. I've seen it almost every place I've worked at, where you'll have a customer, and customer means one thing to one team, and it means a different thing to a different team, and you get these kind of language issues. Do you see what I mean? And so having this kind of this way to express a kind of ubiquitous language across the estate, and having these bounded contexts around it, at least to me, it seems to make an awful lot of sense. And playing with AI has kind of pushed me further in that direction, because I'm seeing all these benefits now, like the fact that I was able to just ask AI, as you just saw, just look at this folder. Oh God, sorry, I'm hitting the wrong keys there. Just look at this folder, and tell me what the application does. In most applications that I've seen in the wild, this would be a major effort for the AI, because it'd have to go off and look at, you'd have business logic in some random endpoint somewhere, and God, if you're in a really messy code base, you might have business logic in a front end somewhere that doesn't really belong there, and suddenly it's like a central place where all this lives as well, and that seems really powerful.
Yeah, but it's a greenfield application, right? But in brownfield, yeah, you need to migrate and build the domain, yeah, in brownfield.
Yeah, there is one thing I just wanted to mention actually, and this is a very final point. And fortunately, like, I only have a certain amount of time to talk about this stuff, but I thought I'd at least put a slide on here about code bases that don't have, that are not greenfield. Because of course, fine, I'm talking about greenfield, and that's nice, but in reality, most people don't have that, that advantage. Again, one of my favorite books that I've ever read, technical books, is Michael Feather's working effectively with legacy code. And again, I probably expect a lot of people here are familiar with it, but for those who aren't, it's a really, really good book. And I think he wrote it around like 2004, I think it was, something like that. And but the concepts are still applicable, very much so to this day. And it's really about concepts, and it's about he defines legacy code as code that doesn't have tests, as you can see there. And there are a whole bunch of techniques that he has for how you can incrementally improve a kind of brownfield code base that doesn't have the coverage that you would like, and how you can kind of improve that over time. And one of those is seams. Then you have things like characterization tests. And what I would kind of recommend, if you're in that kind of environment, which a lot of people obviously are, is to experiment with actually creating skills around those concepts. So a seam skill. So a seam is a point where you can alter behavior without editing the code, and it gives you this kind of testable kind of way, like entry point into the code. And yeah, characterization test is an interesting one, because that's a test that documents exactly what the code does right now, even if the code has bugs in it. You're trying to kind of lock in place exactly what is there so that you can move in these safer kind of steps.
Yes, characterization test, it's a way to build a first test harness from legacy code. And do you have some skills for that on your repository?
I don't, but that's something that I was going to recommend, like by all means, because
Okay.
I tend to only create them as I'm actually using them. So because I haven't really had to use that, I'm lucky enough to be working in a code base that is a few years old right now, but was built from the ground up with test-driven development right from day one. So like the tests are really good, and we trust them. Do you see what I mean? So I haven't had to use it too much, but this is definitely the angle that I would go in if I was in that position, for sure. Yeah, so we're just at the very final stage here, which hopefully I'll be able to demo it to you, and hopefully it does work.
And if you can do a little recap of the demo after.
Yeah, by all means. Yeah, I'm just waiting for the very final step here, but what it should do is it will so what it's actually going to do, just to recap where we're up to and what it's doing in the background. Oh, not like that. So where I started, I was using Kit for the newsletter. I don't know why it didn't appear there, but it does work. But what we're doing is in this demo, we're swapping that out entirely to use Mailchimp, right? So what should happen, hopefully, is when it's done, I should be able to run it locally, go to that same form, and basically put in an email address, and it should appear in Mailchimp. So let me get Mailchimp ready, because I don't think it should be too long. And again, obviously I've had to go through this quite quickly because of the demo, but in reality I would be checking it, as it goes.
Yeah.
I will do that later because I don't really use MailChimp. So I believe it goes here, and what should happen when it's done, I think it should appear on this page shortly. So let me just, hopefully it won't take very long. I did it twice before, and it was it worked both times. So let's see. Yeah, are there any more questions while we're just waiting on that?
I will read the chat.
What I'm just going to do is I'm just going to restart this service so it picks up the new variables and so on. So a second. I think it's there and it's running.
No, I think we have no question. Do you also write end-to-end test? That's one of the questions. Yeah.
Yes, I do, and I've got a really quite a nice setup for that actually. Yeah, I do. The way that I tend to do it, it's the end-to-end tests in this instance are kind of I think of them as journey tests. So I don't go test first with those. I used to do that. I used to do the whole like ATDD thing, and it's still similar. I think the way that I work, but I don't want to test every piece of functionality at that level, but I do want to test the journeys, if that makes sense. So I've got all the journeys are kind of covered by Playwright tests. And another thing that I think is quite cool, and I'll just share this one, have this one for free if you want. It's quite cool. I've got email testing, which I'd never done before, and this actually works really well. So there's this thing called mailchimp, and essentially there's points in the journey where we send emails. This one actually isn't one of them because this is a newsletter, so it goes off to like a different service. But in the actual journey itself, when users are doing things, there's certain points where they're sent emails as part of the journey. And what this does is it runs in a Docker container, and then when the tests run, it actually can capture the email, and then there's an API to it, and so I can actually read the contents of the email and prove that all works. It's quite cool.
And another question from Emmanuel, but he leaves the meeting. How much code do you have review usually a day of AI generated code? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I did answer that one before, but it's basically it's quite quick, the process, I would say. So I don't spend a huge amount of time on it. It's usually because I'm working in these quite small increments. I don't always now feel the need to go through every single line of code in granular detail. I kind of skim through it, and there's certain smells that I look for. So like I'm not a fan of mutation unless you need to, for example. And when I see that, I'll point that out and so on. Now it's telling me that this is ready, so hopefully this will work. Shouldn't have the oh, so hang on, I've got it running on another port already. Oh, there you go. Sorry, put it in there. So if I run this now, hopefully it should pick up those variables. And so I've got them set. I already had the envars set. So if I go in here now, refresh that page, testing.testing.com, will that work? Hang on a minute. This might be because I think I used the same email address before. Hey, hang on. I think this is some kind of way that it does archiving or something in MailChimp. Hey, that one actually did work. There you go. Yeah. So I don't know why the original one didn't work. It's quite annoying when you're doing a live demo. But I probably see what it does. It's probably just an environment variable out of place or something. But as you can see, that has worked. And yeah, it's end to end thing. I'm just thinking if there's anything I missed, but I think that's mostly it. And I would just say just experiment with these things. And the going test first seems to work really well. Mutation testing is extremely powerful. We kind of skip through very quickly there. I can just quickly ask it if you want me to. Just I'll just say summarize the mutation testing results and anything you found and fixed along the way. Let's just see what it did. Because normally, again, I work in these increments where I double check it and it would tell me what it had done. But that's pretty much it, really. I think. If there's any more questions.
Oh yeah, did you automate your deployment as well?
Yes, fully automated. The deployment, yeah. So the way that actually works, funnily enough, the way I do it, I wanted to save a bit of money because using it on GitHub, I was going over the 3 minutes and I was spending like over £100 a month on it. So I actually have my own 4Jo self-hosted kind of solution here. So give me 1 second. I use a YubiKey. So 1 second. And this is what I use. And then just to kind of show you. So if I've got so this is, I think this is what it's probably just done. Obviously there's something failing. But I also do ephemeral deployments here. You can see this is like an ephemeral deployment that'll get destroyed later. It also creates a test login for me here. So I've got like a login that I could use. Under the hood, it uses Terraform to do all of that stuff. So I use Terraform for, everything gets deployed to Cloudflare. And then I use Authentic as an identity provider. So Authentic here. And then what happens is in the pipeline, it uses Terraform to set up the Authentic provider and sets up some test users and that kind of thing. So yeah, I do all of that stuff. And again, it's all depending on your definition, trunk-based development. I use branches, but they're very short-lived branches, merge to main frequently. Yeah. But yeah, the actions are very comprehensive. And obviously, I've got problems there, but this is because, demo and all of that. But
just recap the mutation testing steps, yeah.
The mutation testing step, yeah. Oh, sorry, yeah. What I asked it to do, yeah. So it only found one in this instance, and what did it do? So this is what it added. network error returned success. So it added a new test based on that, I believe. Network is that right? Mutation. Oh no, sorry, killed. Where's the survivor? There you go. We called it. Yeah, so I added a test for the non-OK response path, which killed it immediately. Yeah, so it's all about having this level of confidence, really. And again, I'm working in a kind of mature enough code base that the test patterns are kind of well established as well. But generally speaking, what I would do is I would go through and I would go into here and I would look at the review. I would review the code. This is all the code that it's kind of written, so you can just kind of get a little bit of a feel for it. You can see here that what it's done. So see, this package is newsletter MailChimp. So this here is in my kind of inner core. So that's like microsas wide, if that makes sense. And then in Chipping itself, it's then changed the newsletter adapter here to, can you see how it's just gone from being Kit to MailChimp? And that's how it kind of works. Yeah. But yeah, it seems to be working really well for me, as I say. And if people are interested in the rules, again, if you go to the dot files that I've got here, I do update them. Maybe at some point I might move them out of my dot files because these are literally my dot files that have all kinds of other things. Just quickly on this front, if you do read through, I do explain in here, and there's an install script, and it won't install all my other stuff. It just installs the Claude stuff, and it also backs up stuff that you've got, so it won't delete stuff on your system. But obviously, you should read that yourself. Don't just trust what.
And maybe in 5 or 10 minutes, could you add also another step just to see again your loop with the mutation part?
To see the mutation testing.
Oh yeah, because we
just
have seen a lot of things on the demo. And
yeah.
is it possible to just add one more step in order to see not quickly,
Yeah.
but
I'm just trying to think what I could ask it to do. I'll just
it's
say
not.
for the purposes, it's okay. For the purposes of a demo, I'm just going to ask it to think of an idea. For the purposes of a demo, to illustrate the power of mutation testing, can you think of a quick thing to add now that will show this flow? Let's just ask
Yeah,
it that. I can't.
just in order to show the workflow, but
Yeah.
with one step, not multiple step. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit with time pressure and stuff for on a demo, it's a bit hard to kind of show everything that you want to show in one go. But yeah,
It's why I ask just a little step.
Yeah, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, just see what it comes back with now. Yeah, Dan, outsourcing our thinking to the LLM. Yeah, yeah. I will say as well that I haven't written any code in any environment now since about November last year. It's been all AI. Great demo candidate. Add source support. What does that do? The one field from subscription options we skipped. I'll tell it to just do it. Right. I'll just so we'll do this here. But are you okay with this? It's going to deliberately write one that like where there's a test that doesn't really work. It's just going to do it to show you. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's just to see the workflow.
Yeah. Okay. So it's quite nice because it's literally going to show us. It's going to deliberately do it wrong. Yeah. I will say as well. I don't know if it's because I'm using the max version rather than high, but it seems to be going a bit slower today. Like it is normally a bit faster than this, but I know that they have been having issues today, so I don't know if that's also part of why it seems to be going slower. But normally, like this, just writing a red test would not, take this long.
Yesterday I have some issue also with Cloudflare. Yeah.
Yeah. It's another thing as well. Just while it's doing this, I'll keep this here so you can see. I'll keep that on that side. But I guess worth mentioning again, just as a kind of aside, I suppose. But one thing that I've been doing is, and I find it really useful. It's just a little kind of, I guess, a tip. But where did I put it? Learning. Oh, sorry, I'm looking in my dot file. Sorry, I'm looking in the wrong place. I meant to look in the code itself. Well, let's do this, but I'll quickly explain. I mean, because I'm kind of learning some concepts as well, I've told it to capture lessons from what I do every now and then, and I've got it like a series of markdown files where it'll explain, for example, the value of a value object, for example, right? So initially, I didn't have money as a value object, and I had to carry currency and the amount everywhere, all over the code base. And so I got it to do that refactor it as a value object. And then it wrote a little kind of a mini article for me as like a learning guide. Here's the value of doing that, and this is an example from your code base. And things like that are really it's just a really powerful way of learning a concept as well.
And do you use ADR, architecture decision record also? Yeah.
Yes, I do. So I can show you. Yeah, I have an ADR agent in here as well. Sorry, clicked on the wrong thing. I have an ADR agent. So if I go in here, ADR. This is really useful, and yeah, that's another thing as well. Yeah, I log this kind of knowledge everywhere, so you can see. I'll show you in a second some of the ADRs in this project. So here it already passes. Source isn't implemented yet, but our test can't tell. Yeah, so what's it done here? Let's get this to. You just go here. So write a deliberately weak test that only checks the results. All right, so yeah, it's going to check that. So the test will pass, but it's not asserting the right thing. And then what it should do in a moment is, so it's written a test that deliberately. Let's just quickly see that it wasn't asserting the right thing, I believe, and then 100% coverage across the board, test pass, every line is executed. Traditional CI pipeline would say this is perfect. And now, so because it runs a mutation, again, I will say, obviously it does slow you down a bit when it's doing this, but it is normally a bit faster than you're seeing here. I suspect either because I put it up to the max model, or because Claude are having Anthropic are having issues right now. But still, you should see in a second that this will spot the issue and then report back. Yeah, so now it's mutating it. So you can see in line. So it's deliberately got in there now, and it's deleting the source spread. And see, the test has passed. See that? So this is where the test has passed, but it should have failed. So now we just silently deleted the test only check success, which is identical. So now it knows that that's a surviving mutant. And it will then go in and fix it. That's the idea behind it. Yeah, and as I say, if you look at the what I did, so I'll just quickly show you here. So if you go into sorry, where is it? If I go into Striker, I can never spell Striker. Striker testing.
Mutation testing.
Yeah. It was a little bit kind of cheeky what I did here, but in here somewhere, how do I find it? Go in. Go into here, and you'll see somewhere in here supported mutators. See this page, and it has all of the rules that it uses. So I literally just pointed Claude at this and just said, basically, take all of these mutators, and these are the things that you'll check against. So yeah, and you can see here, look, kill mutant, and now it knows it needs to strengthen that test, and it usually reports back a little report at the end as well, tells you what it did.
And can we see after the commit of this last test? Yeah.
Yeah, you can do that. 1 second, let me grab. I've got a little thing I can show you here. Actually, I can probably do it best in here. I've got source tree that I can just show you. What's it doing here? I don't think it's actually committed at the passing point, but you can see, hopefully this is useful. You can see this is the implementation, and if you see in the test, again, I don't like this. This is a personal thing. I don't like mutation, this kind of thing. But I'll let it go. But what's it doing here? So I think what it's done here is it's added this extra expectation there. You see this merge fields thing, which wasn't there when it originally did the test. So if you see this expectation here, and if you see if I scroll above to what the original test had, I think you can see. Oops. See. Oh. Well, the expectation changed. I think there, didn't it? It's got the merge fields on there. Do you see? It's got that. So now that would cause it to fail. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Okay. He has not finished. Okay. He tried to kill the mutant. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So same mutation, same code, same coverage, but now the test catches it because it asserts on what was sent, not just what came back. Yeah. So it's asserting the I guess the request body in this instance, or the equivalent of a body. Yeah. Yeah, it's really powerful, and I would suggest playing with it because it's still relatively new to myself.
Yeah.
Actually pulling this in and using it in this way, and I'm still working out at the moment. Like the way that I've done it right now is I get it to work in these small increments, and it runs the mutation tests after every green step, and that is effective. But it also is a little bit maybe slower. And one thing that you could potentially do is let it go a bit further and then run mutation testing. So I'm still experimenting a bit there to see where the balance is.
Yeah, the price for confidence, yeah, test.
Yeah, I'll paste this into the chat though, this little summary, if that's okay. So there's a summary of what it just did. Yeah, does that help?
Okay, thank you for. I think it's interesting to see just a little step. So thank you so much, Paul. I think if you have some question from attendees, we can ask it.
Sorry, for me or other people. Yeah, sorry.
Okay. So thank you so much, and I will share the video on our YouTube channel. If you have some links like you have seen during the video, you can send me, Paul, and I will add it on the comment of the video.
Yeah, great. Sounds good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
And thanks for all attendees and all interesting questions. Thank you. Bye. See you soon.
Bye. Bye-bye.